was posted on a Ukrainian government Twitter feed, the country's national anthem, played by a citizen soldier. As we've seen, so many people here from all walks of life have joined in the war effort, bringing pieces of those lives and sometimes the music of it with them. Reporting for us tonight, CNN's Sam Kiley, who you saw a moment ago in Kyiv and Mykolaiv, CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh, and at the White House, CNN's Caitlin Collins. Before we go to any of that, I just want to give you an overview, a kind of broader look at the day from CNN's Kristen Fisher.
Russia is broadening its targets, with new airstrikes hitting the western city of Lviv, which previously had been largely spared. The mayor confirming missiles hit near the airport. The city is just over 40 miles from the border with Poland, a NATO country, and Lviv has been a haven for refugees fleeing the conflict or a stop on the way to Europe. And Russia is not letting up on the capital, Kyiv. With new strikes on the northern residential district, Ukrainian emergency services say one person died after remains of a downed missile set fire to a residential building. In the northeast, fires broke out in this massive market in the city of Kharkiv after it was shelled by Russian forces. City officials say one rescue worker died. In the southern city of Mariupol, 130 people have been rescued from that makeshift shelter bombed by Russian forces, a theater with the Russian word for children written beside the building. Russia denies the attack.
Hundreds of Mariupol residents are still under the debris. Despite the shelling, despite all the difficulties, we will continue rescue work.
The seemingly intentional targeting of civilians has led many in the Biden administration, including the president and secretary of state, to accuse Russia of war crimes as the State Department works to gather evidence against Russian President Vladimir Putin.
In terms of international law, you have to have evidence, you have to have a body of proof that in fact there was intentionality.
And as civilians die in Ukraine, Putin held a concert marking the anniversary of the Russian annexation of Crimea. The concert featured patriotic songs like this one called Made in the USSR. Putin claims Russia has never been more united, as his country suffers a collapsing economy caused by Western sanctions.
The best proof is the way our boys are fighting in this operation, shoulder to shoulder, supporting each other, and if need be, protecting each other like brothers.
That's not how a top U.S. general sees it.
They don't appear, from where I sit at least, to be particularly motivated or particularly engaged in the campaign that they're undertaking.
Kristen Fisher, CNN, Washington.
So with that, let's go to Sam Kiley in Kyiv. We just played some of what you saw earlier today, the after effects of remains of a missile that fell. What else have you been seeing and hearing? What's been going on in Kyiv today?
Well, there has, this afternoon, there was a very heavy bombardment indeed to the far west of the city, very much, I think, beyond the city limits as we would understand them, certainly beyond the ring road. And at the same time, there have also been some serious blasts in the east of the city. Now, not all of these blasts, Anderson, are necessarily incoming. In other words, not all fired by the Russians, because the Ukrainians are getting very much more onto the front foot. That may explain why we're seeing more of these long-range missile strikes. Today's strike, where I was on the ground, was very similar to a similar strike yesterday that also caused a number of casualties. Also was a cruise-type missile, a long-range missile that was down by the anti-missile batteries here in the city, the S-300s predominantly, something that they need a lot more of, according to the government. But the scale of the destruction at that site was absolutely extraordinary from one piece of ordnance. I mean, I've seen a lot of this over the years, but this was extraordinary. It had wiped out, it literally collapsed. 4 stories, 4 different apartments over 4 stories were simply folded down onto the ground, leaving the rest of the building behind. Every single building within a range of about 150 to 200 yards was very severely damaged. The roofs, the windows, the window frames. I spoke to a woman who had been on the far side of the block, so protected by the block of that building, but she felt that she would have been killed had she not been protected by a wardrobe. And sometimes survival in those circumstances can depend on that kind of luck. If you've got a big wardrobe, you may get prevented from being lacerated by flying glass. If you haven't, you may be torn to pieces. Really extraordinary, though, that one person was killed there when there were so many potentially in danger. I think the reason so many people survived that was because they were already in bunkers. But the scale of these missile attacks, as you've seen yourself in Lviv with these recent attacks on the airfield there, very pinpoint accurate and very, very dangerous, even when they're shot out of the sky as this one was.
Nick, in Mykolaiv, which has been on the front lines for weeks, what more do we know about this attack that happened today?
Yeah, I mean, scant details, to be honest. We ourselves saw at a hospital a number of military injured. I can't give you a precise number, and we have not got from officials a precise number of dead or injured. It's fair to say a significant number of soldiers appear to have been killed and injured when rockets or a missile, that is still unclear, slammed into a military base very near where I'm standing here in Mykolaiv. Again, a reflection of the frustration, possibly, of Russian forces around here. They are not doing well strategically on the ground. We've seen ourselves how on the road from here, Mykolaiv, down to Kherson, the next city eastwards along the Black Sea coast, the first one to be taken by Russia, occupied by Russia. On the road from here to there, we are seeing Ukrainian forces pushing down, successfully taking villages back, taking back ground. It's bitter fighting, clearly, and shelling by Russian forces back as they lose that ground. But in losing it, they are doing. And so we have seen today two, certainly, missile strikes. One you mentioned here at the military base in Mykolaiv, the death toll of which unclear at this stage. And the second in Voznesensk, another town where Russia tried to make its presence felt a number of weeks ago and failed. A missile slammed into a warehouse storing ammunition there, causing significant destruction to that facility itself. Again, they lose the fight on the ground and respond with this extraordinary level of blunt force, often through long-range missiles. I think that's concerning, Anderson, going forwards. And if we are going to see Russia essentially losing the fight for towns here, it chooses a sort of scorched earth policy of slamming those towns, military facilities, civilian facilities, you could see there too in Sam's report, with extraordinary firepower.
Caitlin, what did President Biden say about his call with President Xi?
He said it went well. I ran into him in the halls of the West Wing after he had spoken to Chinese President Xi Jinping for about 2 hours today. That is the first time that they have talked since Russia started conducting this invasion. It's the first time they've talked really in 4 months. And so obviously there was a lot to discuss, but really what officials said they wanted to get to the heart of was President Biden wanted to find out if President Xi plans to follow through and grant this request that Russia has made for more military equipment. They've not asked not only for economic assistance as they are facing these crippling sanctions, but they also want help militarily, and not even just with equipment, Anderson. They even need MREs. That is something that's been made public, whether that's to put China in a bad spot or to embarrass Putin and show that his forces are hurting so bad that they need these ready-to-eat meals because they don't have enough food supplies while they're conducting this invasion remains to be seen. But the White House said that Biden outlined and got specific about what the consequences would be if China does move to help this, because the concern here at the White House is that China could move to help backfill when it comes to these sanctions or help when it comes to military equipment. And they believe that could really change potentially the trajectory of this, to have Xi aligning himself with Putin even further than he already has, given we know that he got a heads up on the invasion coming, or at least senior Chinese officials did. And so that's really been the concern here at the White House. But the thing tonight is still that they are concerned, Anderson, that China might follow through and grant that request to Russia. And they say basically they just have to wait and see what China does over the next several weeks.
Sam, what are the capabilities? I mean, you talked about the anti-ballistic missile launchers that the Ukrainians have, but want obviously more of. Can you just talk about that a little bit more? Because obviously those long-range, both Nick was talking about those long-range ballistic missiles, and you were being an increasing concern as they don't make progress on the battlefield. What are the capabilities for them to knock rockets coming out of the sky?
Well, they have their main anti-aircraft capability, certainly for the long ranges, the S-300. They've got Stingers, but you never hit a missile with a Stinger, but you can hit a helicopter or a low-flying aircraft. They are also being supplied with a number of other of the shorter range anti-aircraft batteries. What they have been asking for in the past is stuff similar to Israel's Iron Dome. Israel has resisted sending Iron Dome here in the past. I'm not sure where they stand at the moment, but this is clearly it is helping to keep the centre of Kyiv safe at the same time. And it's very interesting what Nick's been reporting there about the battle for Mykolaiv and down to Kherson, because the Ukrainian armed forces here in the capital are saying that they are having similar successes in terms of a counter-offensive against the Russian invaders in the southwest of the city, the west, and particularly in the east, claiming that they pushed them in the east back 70 kilometers. That puts this, where I'm standing here, out of range of all of Russia's normal, traditional artillery, but in range, obviously, of the longer range missile systems such as Iskander and others. And those deliver these very, very big warheads. Some of them are smart, but some of them are very, very dangerous in that they are simply fired in a general direction. And I think we're likely to see more of that, as Nick was also saying, where he is down in the south.
And Nick, if you could just talk a little bit about the theater that was struck, how many people have so far been pulled out, and what do we know about, I mean, what are the capabilities for them to actually keep digging through the wreckage?
I mean, I wish I could tell you more, to be honest, but in Mariupol, to the other side of, absolutely, the other side of the Crimea Peninsula, further east of where I'm standing here, in Mykolaiv, you referring to that airstrike that hit the drama theatre, an established, well-known bomb shelter. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying, look, at this stage, 130 people have been pulled or helped out of the rubble there as survivors. The problem is that there were thought to have been over 1,000 there when the bomb struck. And that's backed up by video shot or posted 6 days before that rather barbaric attack, showing women and children crammed into very dense and dark conditions there, sharing what food they could have. And so we are still now 2 days later, because of the difficulties that rescuers have, frankly, in the number of rescuers available to the task, and the fact that that task is impeded by intense shelling around there. We are still unclear as to how many people were in that bomb shelter, how many survived, how many have been brought out. It's 130 that we know of, but hopefully that figure has grown in recent hours. And so still that utterly chilling attack is lacking basic information because of the circumstances in which it occurred, Anderson. Obviously the priority of rescue is getting people out, not tallying who unfortunately remains in these circumstances. But satellite images showing the damage done to Mariupol and a lengthy queue of cars trying to get out as these humanitarian corridors struggle to do anything positive for those stuck in there in such fraught circumstances. Anderson?
Yeah, Nick Payne-Walsh, Sam Kiley, Caitlin Collins, appreciate it all. Thank you. Coming up next, a CNN exclusive. We saw Russian forces grab him, the kidnap caught on security cameras. We reported on his release in a prisoner swap. Tonight, my conversation with the mayor of Melitopol. Later, our military analyst, two top generals on the Mykolaiv strike, but also the growing assessment that Russia is losing momentum and transitioning into a long, grinding, and deadly to civilians war of attrition. There is late word tonight that the mayor of a Kharkiv area town has been released. We got word of his abduction allegedly by Russian forces just yesterday. Now, several days earlier, you may remember, Russians grabbed Melitopol's mayor, Ivan Fedorov. That is them, you see at the top of your screen, hustling him away. He was freed just yesterday in a prisoner swap, according to officials, and gave his first English language interview to us today. I spoke to him earlier, and you'll see the video connection was at times hit and miss, but we think it's important for you to hear what he had to say. Mayor Fedorov, what happened when you were abducted? Where were you, and what did they do?
They hold me on the Melitopol police in a small room, in a room for bad boys, and they hold me until 6 days and show me that they have a greatest power, they have a greatest army, many soldiers with guns, and they ask me stop meetings in Melitopol civilian meetings who want to live in from peoples who want to live in Ukraine but not in Russia Federation. They want me to stop meetings. They want me that I support him and to make Russian Federation in Melitopol. But I said no, I can't do it.
Was it Russian soldiers who took you?
Yes, many soldiers talk with me. Not only soldiers, but special secret services agents.
How did they treat you? Did they hurt you? Did they yell at you? How did they treat you?
No. They leave me without any connections. They leave me without any speakings. In the next rooms on police, they beat some, and it's emotion very dangerous situation.
After you were arrested, citizens in your town protested in the streets calling for your return. Did you know that was happening? Did you know that people were protesting?
No, I don't know anything because I was without cell phone, without internet, without any information. I don't know it.
A prosecutor in the Luhansk region, backed by Russia, said that you were going to be tried for terrorism charges. Were you told that?
No, I don't know it. No, of course not, because I don't know any terrorist organization in Ukraine, and of course I didn't give any finance for him. It's a joke. It's nothing.
President Zelensky said your kidnapping was a crime against democracy. There are other Ukrainian officials in other cities who have reportedly been kidnapped as well. Is this what is going to happen? Is this Russia's plan in cities they control?
Of course, it's a Russian plan because many of my colleagues are now in the same situation, and now we try to help them. But of course, it's a Russian plan because I and my colleagues, it's elected mayors and elected by our citizens. That's why they want to push us. They want to make us in a dangerous situation, and they want to show for us their power. Of course, it's their plan. Yes.
Were you worried? Were you scared when you were taken?
Of course, of course, it was scary, but I need to do it because my citizens elected me, and I must show them that we must help our citizens. And they elected me as a mayor from democracy, Ukraine, civilian country. That's why we must help them.
You were released, Ukrainian officials say, for 9 Russian captured soldiers. There was an exchange of prisoners. Yes. Did you know that was taking place? Did they just let you go?
Yes, I was saw these 9 soldiers. It's very young soldiers, but I think that age don't take any information, because the soldiers come to our country to kill our children, to kill our women, to kill our civilian peoples in Ukraine. That's why these soldiers come to Ukraine to kill. And it's the soldiers, it's not young peoples.
A replacement mayor was appointed by Russian forces. They've taken down the Ukrainian flag. They've tried to disband the city council. What happens to you now?
Yes, it was principal position of our team, because on Melitopol was Ukrainian flag, because Melitopol is Ukrainian city. But when they was hold me on second day, they put down the Ukrainian flag on central square of Melitopol, and they show their power for all civilian peoples in Melitopol. Now Melitopol is in a dangerous situation because we have many humanitarian problems. There are less food in Melitopol, less fuel, less pharmacy, and many medical problems. Our team now don't work in Melitopol because Russian Federation, the Russian soldiers fully control this situation. But as I spoke with President Zelensky, he proud that in a few time Melitopol again will be Ukrainian city, as all cities in Ukraine was annexed by Russian Federation.
So what will you do now? Where do you go?
President give me tasks. Now I will work in Zaporizhia, and make all tasks that give me president.
What is your message to the Ukrainian citizens in Melitopol?
I have messages not for Ukrainian peoples in Melitopol. I have a message for all world. All world, European, US world, must to understand that it is not a war from Ukraine and Russia Federation. It's war from Russia Federation and all over the world. And all over the world must to understand if Ukraine can't win on this war, Russia Federation start war with Europe, with many countries of Europe and all over the world. That's why we must to be together with we must be together on this war, and we must together win Russia Federation.
Finally, what is your message to Russian troops? Your message to Vladimir Putin?
They must understand that we don't want anything from Russia Federation. We have our country, Ukraine, our democracy country, Ukraine, and we don't want something from Russia Federation. And we think that Russia Federation must not want anything from Ukraine. That's why I think that they must live on their home and solve their problems, but not our problems.
Mayor Fedorov, thank you for your time. I'm glad you're free.
Thank you, too. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Just ahead, a look at the weapons and the courage it's taking for Ukrainians in one city to try to overcome Russian troops and the cost of that resistance in human lives.